Whether you want to admit it or not, Lamb of God have been a valuable American heavy metal export over the past 15 years. They're talked about from the metal underground to suburbia. They have a legion of diehard fans that hang on the sermons of Randy Blythe, and they have modest enough album sales that have made a splash in the community. But just because you have a church full of rabid Lamb of God parishioners doesn't mean that everybody is as willing to just walk in off the streets and join the congregation. Now, I myself am a Lamb of God fan, but I'm always curious as to why the detractors never opted to hop on board or why they decided to walk away. So let's explore that today. Let's take a look at 5 reasons why people hate Lamb of God. And we, of course, begin with number 5, which is that they're not a religious band. Now, you've seen this and had to question its validity over the past couple of years because the social media age is one that is so very trustworthy. You see a story about somebody of religious origin that decides to pick up a Lamb of God album thinking that the name alone is going to dictate exactly what the music is going to sound like, and then all of a sudden gets very disappointed and goes on a rant whenever they discover what the music itself sounds like. You know, because we don't have things like Google or YouTube or Wikipedia in order to help us out if we don't know about something prior to making a purchase. That whole informed idea just doesn't seem to really exist. Yeah, whenever you do that, whenever you actually do the research, you realize that the band started off as Burn the Priest, which may not exactly be too great for the flock of 17 Christian kiddies. Oh boy, this world might just be doomed. Now, some of these may actually be just, fun and games. However, there are definitely a larger variety of people that are out there that have tried this band thinking that they would have a little bit of an overtone to them, kind of like Jars of Clay, only heavier, and have been sorely disappointed. Number 4, they're inconsistent. Now, this one's just kind of weird, considering there's one argument that comes out, and this argument comes, and whenever the two merge, the math feels really, really wrong. There are, of course, a lot of fans of Lamb of God that will hang on to every single thing that they do, thinking and feeling that it is absolutely brilliant. However, for those who perhaps were once associated with the band but no longer are, either that or could never get into the bands because they listened to the stuff and felt that it just wasn't very strong. Either that or they did a great job with the singles and the really keynote or hallmark tracks. However, the entirety of the albums are just not consistent enough. There have been many folks online that have stated that the first half of a lot of these albums have been very, very consistent and very, very good, but the second halves just trail off. Either that or it's about a 5-to-5 split, 50-50 split rather, of whether or not the tracks are any good or not. What makes this a little bit of a strange argument is that they will argue this, but then they will state that there's really no album within their catalog that's an all-out stinker, which I guess kind of makes sense. If you're an average band in the eyes of somebody, you have average albums, and you averagely produce average stuff, and average. I don't know. This one doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I've always felt that Lamb of God has had a lot of strong sides to them. It's just that idea that they can sometimes get a little bit overly derivative with some of their structures, but we'll get to that. Number 3, they're not metal enough. What? What? You're serious. Someone's serious about this. A lot of people are serious about this. Okay, well, we'll actually go with this because it's actually true, and that's the sad thing about this. Of course, we all know about the true and poser metal debate. We also know that if you're a heavy metal band that is from the past 10 to 15 years and don't have vocals or music that sounds like a buzzsaw is raping 2 antelopes as they scream in agony, that it's not technically true metal or not metal enough. That's exactly the argument that's happening here, citing that even though Lamb of God is basically, this generation's coming of Pantera, that's just not good enough anymore. Now you have to have something even greater for this. And also this has a lot to do with the stemming idea of their popularity. Popularity in heavy metal is sometimes seen as a bad thing, even though those same individuals will then look at the fact that heavy metal is not popular and say, why the fuck isn't this more popular? It's kind of a catch-22. Either way you lose. This is a stupid argument, and this is one that just shouldn't even be, but definitely exists a lot more than it should. Number 2, speaking of Pantera, they're Pantera, the sequel. And the sequel's never as good as the original. Okay, this is basically just the idea that a lot of fans feel that they're attempting to do what Pantera did, and Pantera did it better. So basically they're using a comparison point between 2 bands as if they are the same entity, or at least byproducts of the same entity, and one's better than the other, so they shouldn't like the other. It's really, really confusing, just as confusing as it sounds. Of course, Pantera, whenever they were big in the 1990s, they were able to produce huge albums that most people say saved metal, and a lot of folks are now on the bandwagon of either stating that fact or stating the fact that Pantera has always sucked and nobody should like them. Why do you like Pantera? Pantera's garbage. Oh my god, why Pantera? And Lamb of God is essentially a band that's just trying to do the same thing. They have the tough guy Machismo that's doing the vocals, they have Chugga Chugga Riff Riff Riff, and the only thing that's really different is the fact that Dimebag Darrell is not a member of Lamb of God. There's not soaring guitar solos that feel like it's furthering rock and heavy metal music. Really. This is one of those arguments where you just kind of want to take somebody out back, smack them a couple of times, and if they still say, Lamb of God's not Pantera, you say, you're very, very right, but that means they suck, and then you shoot them in the face with a revolver. This is one of those arguments that honestly is just going to damage the reputation of the metal band as opposed to the metal band themselves. Now, I'm not saying that you can't compare two bands and cite which one is better than the other. That's fine, but don't use that as your sole reason why you don't get into a band because they don't sound like another band or because they sound too much like another band. That's a stupid argument, and you're going to miss out on some potentially good material based around that. If you just don't like the band, then just say you don't like the band. Don't say it's because they're Pantera 2.0. And that brings us to the number one reason: they're boring songwriters. This goes back to number 4 with their inconsistent. A lot of folks will cite this about Randy Blythe, saying that his vocal style is absolutely trite and it's something that is the same on each and every track. You could say that for a lot of other vocalists as well, but many people don't. And plus, whenever you examine the most recent Lamb of God album from 2015, you'll start to recognize that Randy's doing a couple of other things that are a bit different. And then there's that song with Chino Moreno on it that's just absolutely orgasmic. However, the boring songwriter idea is based around the fact that every song begins to feel a little bit derivative. If you don't know what that word means, if it's too big, it means it starts to sound the same. It's not that they're boring songwriters, it's just that they're kind of within a nice little safe bubble, which once again they kind of broke out of with their 2015 album. Am I saying their 2015 album is better than the rest of their material? Absolutely not. Principally because it was a bit inconsistent. All of the singles that we got from that album were absolutely amazing. The remaining tracks that we got, not as much. In fact, at that point in time, it just seemed like they were recycling some of the similar ideas. But that's kind of the idea. They recycle a little bit. Some of their songs do have a similar structure. Some of their songs have similar timing. Some of their songs just outright sound the same. But that's the mark of a band that knows its audience, that knows that that's what they're really looking for. They're not trying to cater to everybody else that's out there. They're not trying to cater to those that hope that they become a progressive blackened grindcore death thrash band. And if a band ever decided to do that, that would be absolute lunacy. Like, the wrong kind of lunacy. It would be absolutely ridiculous. Lamb of God isn't so much boring songwriters as they are just catering to the sound that they're strongest at really performing, not to mention staying within their comfort zone. They broke out of that comfort zone last year, and they were praised for it. Maybe we'll see more continuance of that. As of right now, the whole idea of them being boring songwriters is starting to feel a little bit silly, considering their 2015 release. However, we'll see what happens in the future. Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. 5 reasons why people hate Lamb of God, and some of those are silly as shit. I can't believe it. Some people don't think that Lamb of God's a heavy metal band. That's crazy to me. But you know what? At this point in time, there is no heavy metal anymore. Heavy metal is gone except for one thing and one thing alone, and that's Chad Kroeger's toenail. I'd show you a photograph of that. Every time I look at it, it makes me laugh. And that's my joy, not yours. If you think that there's any reasons that we missed, leave them in the comments section below. If you think there's another band that should be roasted or explored why they're disliked, leave those ideas and suggestions in the comments section as well. And don't forget to like and subscribe. My name is Cover Killer Nation, and I'll talk to you guys the next time. Take care.